Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Savannah, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Airborne School and my first jump. So there's 3 weeks. The first week is ground week, the second week is tower week, and the third week is jump week. Okay, so ground week consists of basically learning how to hit the ground, learning how to fall. So they give you a bunch of briefs. They're gonna, say pre-jump to you like 1,000 times, so you know like the actions in the air and stuff. Which is like pulling your risers. That's what I was doing. And then you're gonna go to these platforms and essentially fall off of them like over and over and over and over again. And they're gonna, you're gonna go through these plane simulations where it's like you're holding onto your static line and they teach you how to, exit the aircraft and all sorts of stuff. So it's all just like check the block type stuff, so you know how to do what you're about to do in the air. Okay, so tower week. This is week 2. This is essentially where you do, there's 2 towers. There's a 34-foot tower, which is on a zip line. It's like a tower that you climb up. Well, there's like stairs, and then you jump out of the tower, and it's a zip line. You're connected to a zip line, and you're in a parachute harness. The reason why it's 34 feet is because usually people who have a fear of heights start to get, it starts to kick in at around 34 feet. So, and after that, they also have the 250-foot tower, which is essentially, it's a parachute that's already open and you're connected to the harness, and it like pulls you up and then drops you. So you're kind of just like floating down. Okay, so the third and final week is jump week. This is what everybody's been waiting for. You have to complete 5 high-performance aircraft jumps. That's how they say it. So there's going to be 2 different aircrafts that you're jumping out of. You might not get to jump out of both of them, but they try to switch up as much as they can. So there's an AC-130, which is extremely small, and they fucking suck, and a C-17, which those are a little bit bigger, like a lot bigger actually, and those are not as bad. If you get a C-17 jump, just like be happy, because those are the better ones to jump out of. You're gonna do 5 jumps. You're gonna do 2 daytime Hollywoods, I think, is what I did, and then you're gonna do a nighttime Hollywood, and then a daytime combat, and then a nighttime combat. So essentially, we're all sitting in the pack shed. Jump week kind of sucks because you're sitting in the pack shed for, I want to say, like 9 hours at a time. So because everybody in your entire airborne class is jumping on the same day, so like 220 people are all sitting in this pack shed. Waiting for planes to come. So, you're sitting there, they rig you up, you're putting on your parachute harness and stuff, and then you essentially, once you get checked off, which it's called JMPI'd, it's when a jump master comes and checks your equipment to make sure that you're good to go. Once you're done with that, you essentially take off your helmet and then you sit there for hours and hours and hours. And if you have to pee, sucks. People were literally wearing diapers because they knew that they were going to be sitting in the pack shed. Either that and like they could just go, or I didn't, like I just sucked it up, or girls were wearing diapers because they were afraid to jump out of the plane. They were afraid they were literally gonna piss their pants when they jumped out. So you're sitting there for like hours and hours, and finally once it's your time to jump, you get up, you walk to the door, and then you sit down in the plane. I remember my first jump was out of an AC-130, and it's this super teeny tiny plane. It's probably huge to people who don't normally see planes, but if you're jumping out of it, it's fucking small because you're all crammed in there like sardines. So we're sitting in there, and I want to say I was like the 9th jumper. I was like in the middle of people, so I had people in front of me, people in back of me. So I was sitting there thinking like, okay, as long as I have people in front of me and back of me, I'm not gonna like pussy out. I'm not gonna, be afraid or whatever. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking like, wow, it's really fucking loud in here because like everybody's yelling. They're like, sit down, do this, do that. They're like, make sure everybody's like getting crammed in there. And then the propellers of the plane super fucking loud. So you're sitting there. I'm sitting there terrified. Everything's loud and hectic. And I remember my platoon sergeant of Airborne School was my jump master, and he was actually my safety. He was the person that was taking static lines, and he walks up to us and he goes, I promise all of you guys are getting out of this plane. He's like yelling, so this is like a lot. I just imagine it being a lot more hectic. He says, I promise all of you guys are getting out of this plane. I've never had a jump refusal, and I'm not gonna start with my own platoon. So I'm sitting there like, you might start with your own platoon. Like, you might. So the doors are closed. God, this is like, I remember this. It's giving me like anxiety talking about it because I never got over jumping. I never once was just like, this is fine. I'm used to it. Like, no, bitch. I was scared every fucking time. So they close the doors. The propellers start getting even louder because the plane's starting up. The plane starts moving. My heart's beating fast. I'm like racing and like want to pass out. I'm thinking like, fuck this. I'm not jumping. So I'm starting to get in my mindset that I'm going to refuse to jump. Like, I'm gonna get up and I'm not gonna hook up my shit. I'm just gonna like sit there and be like, I'm not doing this shit, fuck that. So I'm like getting the courage to tell them like that I'm not doing it. And then the plane, you know, starts moving, takes off, and then so they give these commands like 10 minutes, and that means that you're gonna be jumping out in 10 minutes. Well, that was not the case. They said 10 minutes, 2 minutes later, like stand up or whatever. I was like, what? It hasn't been 10 minutes. So I'm like sitting there freaking out. So I'm like standing up or whatever, and I'm like going through the motions. I'm like, okay, like I'm checking my equipment, you know, I hook up my static line. I'm like, okay, you know, I actually am gonna do this. I'll do it. And then, you know, we're doing all of our stuff, and then the doors open, and then it gets 10 times louder in that bitch, because not only can you hear the propellers, you can hear like, well, they're not actually propellers. They're like, such an idiot. They're jets, but the jets have fans. You get it. It's a fucking plane. They're loud. So the doors open and there's like wind. There's like wind going everywhere. I'm like freaking out. And then I'm like, fuck this. I'm not doing this shit. Like, I immediately, my heart dropped in my stomach. I was like, fuck this. I'm not doing it. Then I see some dude on the other side. So like, you're in the plane. There's people on the right and people on the left are all like standing up, like holding their static lines, getting ready to jump out. The first jumper on the other side pussied out. He literally started trying to unhook his static line, and the jump masters like are all running over to him. They're like, stop, like you can't do that, like you're jumping out of the plane, like it's not that bad, it's not that bad. And I'm like, fuck that, I'm not gonna be a pussy like that guy, I'm doing it. So this dude ends up actually refusing. He said like, nope, I'm not doing it, like fuck this, I can't. Because he's the first jumper. He's looking straight out the plane. Like, you can see that you're 1,250 feet up in the air. You're like, oh, fuck. So they take his static line off, and they send him to the back of the plane, make him sit on his hands, treat him pretty much like a prisoner, and they're like, fuck you, dude, sit down. Like, don't say shit. So I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'm not going to be a pussy like this guy. I'm totally doing it. Then they're like, 1 minute. I'm like, ugh. Like, I'm going to throw up. So that minute was the longest minute of my life. I was sitting there freaking the fuck out, and then finally I was like, you know what, just look at someone's shoes. Don't even look out the door, just look at someone's shoes. So I'm holding my static line, and they're like, 30 seconds. 30 seconds passes. Get ready. The first jumper gets into the door or whatever, and then I'm watching the light go from red to green, and as soon as it goes from red to green, they're like, green light, go! They slap this dude on the ass, he jumps out, and then everybody's walking, and then before I know it, like, I'm walking, and I'm like, I'm walking, like, so I'm like walking through this fucking line, through the plane, getting ready to jump out, and I remember I walked so fast, and I jumped. I was so scared, because you have to jump up 6 inches and out 36 inches in order to get a good complete exit out of the aircraft. I jumped so far out of that bitch. I was terrified. I was like, I'm doing this shit. I hand this dude my static line. I turn, I jump, and I'm like, ooh. So I'm like holding my reserve, and I'm like flying through the air, because not only is the plane going like 150 miles an hour, I think, like, you jump out behind a jet, so not only are you going really fast, but you get shot out by the jet. So I'm like flying out, and I forgot to even count. You're supposed to count, because if your parachute doesn't open by 6 seconds, which like 1,000, 2,000, by 6 seconds, something's wrong. Thankfully, my parachute opened, I want to say in like 2 or 3 seconds, just because I felt the jolt, and I was like, oh fuck, I forgot to count. So like my parachute's open, and I'm like, I'm like breathing, and like as soon as you get out of the plane, super loud inside, you get out, and as soon as your parachute's open, it's quiet. It's peaceful, you're gliding down, it's super nice. You're like, it's actually really pretty because you're super high in the air and you're like gliding down. You hear like if you were to like flap a blanket or something, like that's what it sounds like, because your parachute's flapping in the wind a little bit. And then I finally get to the ground, I do my PLF, good landing, and then I fall, and I'm like, sick, I did it, like I'm on the ground, fuck yeah. And then a gust of wind takes my parachute, my suspension lines wrap around my feet, flip me over, and then wrap around my neck, and they're like dragging me. I'm getting choked out. I think I'm gonna die. I'm like, oh, fuck. So I'm like trying to get my suspension lines off, like trying to like fucking unhook my canopy release assemblies so the parachute will just fall off me and collapse. So I got one off, and then I like got the suspension lines off and like got the other one off, and then I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, that was a doozy. Like, that was a scary jump. And I finally, like, I'm on ground, and I'm not, getting choked out anymore, so I'm, like, laying there, and I'm, like, touching the grass. I'm like, thank God, like, I'm not dead. And I get up, and I pack my parachute, and I'm, like, put my little parachute on, like, doodling on over to the drop zone, like, meeting area, assembly area, and then I remember, like, I have to do that 4 more times, and they're only gonna get harder from now, because all the other ones are gonna be at night. Well, there's 2 other ones that are going to be at night, and 2 more jumps of which are going to be with combat equipment. So after those, it got easier, and then I want to say like it did get a lot easier. I was never like just not scared, but I was less scared. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's my experience with Airborne School, what to expect for Airborne School, and my little first jump story. So I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're always updated when I post a new video, and thank you for watching.